Well, greetings. Welcome to our CityRise podcast. Great to have Nate with us with Bridges International. And as always, want to welcome Ben Hayes, who's on our staff here also. And we'd just love to hear from Nate, really kind of your story. Tell us a little bit about your family first and kind of catch us up how you came to be serving there with Bridges.
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here. I'm really pleased to be able to spend this time with you guys this morning.
Yeah.
I grew up in a Christian family. My parents loved the Lord and brought me and my siblings up to do the same. And interestingly, from a very young age, we always had people from all over the world in our house. We lived really close to Michigan State University up in Lansing, Michigan, East Lansing, Michigan. And so my parents were very hospitable, still are. Yeah. And so we were surrounded by different cultures from a very young age.
Very cool.
I gave my life to the Lord at a young age and got involved with different ministries all throughout kind of my life. I had my first opportunity to serve overseas right towards the end of my college years at the University of Toledo in Ohio, and really got a passion for serving the Lord cross-culturally at that time. And it's been an adventure ever since.
Well, super. Nice. All right. Married, kids?
Yeah. So I am married. My wife, Wendy, and I have been married almost 20 years. Right. It'll be 20 years in November. And we've got 4 kids, ages 10 to 17. So.
All right. Wow. You mentioned going overseas. Where have you traveled and for what lengths of times on these mission opportunities?
I spent a couple of years in Eastern Europe.
Okay.
And then multiple years in different places around kind of the Middle East and Central Asian regions.
Okay. Well, we were appointed by the International Mission Board. 1990, it was called the Foreign Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention, and we served in Poland for many years. We were the first ones there. Okay. And so many of my travels took me all across Central Asia, Eastern Europe. So much of my heart was left there. Yeah. So Bridges International. So you guys have a reach internationally, but what do you do here locally?
Yeah, so we just love international students.
All right.
And so the international students coming back from overseas, we really wanted to get involved with continuing to impact the nations of the world. And we heard about Bridges International and the opportunity with international students. And what really captured our heart is international students offer a really unique opportunity because many of these students are coming from some of the hardest to reach countries in the world. At the same time, the students who are coming, in many cases, these are very bright, very courageous, very connected young people who have a lot of potential to be influencers
very
in their
upwardly
country.
Mobile.
Right. Yeah. And so we love that opportunity. Also, as they're coming here, and many times they're in a place where they're really asking a lot of questions because they're entering a new world. Everything's changing around them. And so they're in a time in their lives when they're really exploring about what is true, what is real, what is good, what have I always believed in, how might that fit, in these things. And then also, they're just hungry for relationships.
Sure.
And so really what we do is we provide different services for these international students. Yeah. We give them opportunities to connect with other international students. We give them opportunities to connect with local families and believers here in Houston. We give them opportunities to just have fun, to learn about the culture, to learn about holidays. We show them around the city. We help get them from the airport, all sorts of different services that we provide for these international students. And then also opportunities to explore faith and to share about what they've learned and grown up with, and to learn about the gospel and about the scriptures and to meet Christians and to have those conversations as well.
Yeah. It's been fun, Nate, over the years to get to work with you and mobilize volunteers and partner together, with Bridges and some of these events. And, of course, we love what you do and we love where you do it. Houston is really such a strategic city for this work, so talk a little bit about that, right? What are some of the metrics? Give us the names of the universities, kind of some of the major people groups or major countries where we see just a lot of students coming. How many students are coming? What's so strategic about Houston as it relates to international students?
Yeah, great question. Thanks. So from what we've done with our research, it looks like there's about 20,000 international students in the Houston area.
Wow.
The largest universities, colleges where those are studying would be the University of Houston,
Right.
Houston Community College,
Uh-huh.
Rice University, and then you've got a whole bunch of others.
Even HCU now is quite a bit.
Yeah. HCU has a number of international students, and we really love connecting with them.
Yeah.
And
coming from what parts of the world do we mostly see, or what
really,
sort of faith backgrounds?
Yeah. And really, these students are coming from every different country of the world. I mean, there's dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of countries that we've met students from. The largest by far will be India, followed by China. And then we get a lot of students from some places in the Middle East, from Iran,
Africa.
from Turkey, a lot of students from Africa, Nigeria, especially. We send a lot. But we also get students from North Africa and Latin America and from Europe. And so they're really coming from all over the place.
Yeah. And just to help listeners understand kind of how Bridges operates in Houston, or kind of what the rhythm looks like, tell us about, 2, 3, 4 of your kind of your biggest annual events, that these are like real fixture events that reach a lot of students. And then tell us about, kind of your weekly grind, how students connect kind of on a week in, week out basis. That way people kind of understand, sort of the strategy.
Yeah. So we start off every semester with a welcome tour and welcome lunch that we have at different locations around the city. And so we actually are able to work in coordination with the different universities to invite students to just come, and we show them around the city. We'll take them on a walking tour and sometimes a bus tour of the city. And then we sit down together for a lunch and introduce them to some different things that they'll want to know while they're here in Houston.
And that's a big event these days. Like that is a really big event.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we love doing it. And at that lunch, then they'll have a chance to get connected with a host family. And our host is that family will be able to follow up with their 3, 4, 5 students, build a relationship that will continue through that semester and that year. Right. So those are our biggest events every year, our welcome events. Right. But then we'll also do a lot of holiday focused events. Right here at Westview, we often will have a Christmas party. We're able to invite students in and teach them about some of the traditions of Christmas, but then also the meaning behind the holiday, because many of these students have never heard the story of Christmas or what that's all about. We'll do events around Easter, for Good Friday. Again, getting to celebrate some of the traditions behind the holiday, but then the story and what the meaning of that is. And some of our other events where we love to get volunteers involved are around holidays as well, where we'll encourage volunteers to sign up to host 2, 3 international students for a Thanksgiving meal sometime during the week of Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving's big.
Or an Easter meal sometime during Easter weekend, to be able to bring some students into what they're already doing with their families. It's a huge highlight for these students, because they get to be in an actual local home and family and see what we're doing. And it's a highlight often for these families too, because they get to bring somebody else in and share what God has blessed them.
You find that the students they're very open to this. They enjoy it. It's a high point of sort of their American, kind of exchange student experience. They enjoy going into the homes of locals.
I mean, you guys have both traveled, one of the highlights of going to a new place is you get to know the people of that place.
Get the local thing.
And the more authentic it is, the better. So you don't want to just meet people at some,
like a restaurant.
To get into a home, to really see the way a family is operating, it's always going to be one of the highlights of your time in that place. And these students see it the same way. Getting a chance to interact with a family in their own home, getting to celebrate an American or a worldwide holiday, but the way that we celebrate it in America and see what it really looks like here is a big highlight. So, some students are just very focused on their studies, and there's no social nothing. But for the students that come, they always really love getting to be a part of it and getting to do that.
That's cool.
We were able to connect with one of your students who lived in one of the countries we lived in. And it was an amazing conversation, because we actually lived about 10 miles apart for a while.
Oh, wow.
And so knew many of the same, obviously, landmarks, places, foods. And so it was a good connection. How many host families would you need in a given year? Round figure.
We try to get around 150 volunteers at our our first welcome event, because we'll often have around 300 students there. Wow. And so for our August welcome event, that's the biggest event that we have. And so we're usually looking for, around 150 volunteers for that event. For Thanksgiving, it depends on how many students sign up, but often we'll have about 40 families maybe that will sign up to host a student for Thanksgiving. Easter is smaller. I think we only had maybe 8 or so families that hosted for Easter this time.
So if someone's listening, how could they sign up?
Yeah, we have a website, houstonbridges.com, and you can get in touch with us there, or an email address, volunteerhouston@bridgesinternational.com.
Okay.
I know that's a little bit long, volunteerhouston@bridgesinternational.com, or just Google search Bridges International Houston, and I'm sure you can find it, and there's ways to get in touch with us.
So some are nervous, say, well, I don't speak another language, which would be most Americans. Yeah. Obviously these students are studying in English.
Right, yeah. One of the amazing opportunities with international students is they've come here and they know English. I mean, to get a master's degree.
And they want to get better at it too.
Yeah, and they want to get better. It's an awesome opportunity to be able to practice for them. But yeah, I mean, if they're studying for a master's degree or a PhD at an American university, clearly they're going to be able to communicate. It's really not a language
barrier.
And so.
Yeah. Do you find like cultural barriers, or a certain amount of sort of cultural education that the average American family might need to invite and really welcome an international? For example, if a student is from a Muslim background, what are some tips? What are some kind of just some sensitivity education pieces that you think might be helpful for listeners that maybe want to do this, but they want to do it well, and they want to do it in a really respectful, welcoming way? What are some of those kind of tips?
Yeah. I mean, I think what you just said there is the key: being respectful, not coming in with the attitude of everything I believe and I know and the way I do things is the right way, and anything that you do that's different is therefore wrong. You know, but coming in respectful and as a learner, like, I really want to learn. What do you think? What do you believe? How do you do things? Let's learn from each other. Let's experience this together. Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest thing, because again, we're talking dozens, if not hundreds of different countries. You can't learn everything there is to know about.
It's really having your heart in the right
going
place.
In with the right heart.
That's really good.
The biggest thing. As a servant, as a learner, as somebody who wants to respect the other.
And I would assume you'd probably give some coaching even on meal choices.
Yes.
Sometimes, again, I'm an American, so I can say this. Sometimes we're kind of clueless that, they don't eat pork either.
Right. Yeah. No, we provide training for people that sign up.
Right.
Specifically to do some of the meal hosting. Yeah. We'll send you information. You know, these are some things to think about serving. And we ask ahead of time, like, would you be okay serving this kind of a dish if you had this kind of a student? And for those that are really comfortable, some are really excited. Like, they're excited to serve a vegetarian dish or a halal dish, as they say. Others are like, maybe not this first time. And that's fine. Then we can send you students who will just eat about anything that you send them. So we try to make it work for the family as well as the students.
That's very cool.
Well, Nate, I often ask of a story where you've seen to change life. Maybe a student came in as a freshman or underclass or something, and you were able to watch for 2, 3, 5 years and would say there was a significant faith change or growth in their lives. Could you share one?
Yeah. So a student who came in just actually really about the same time we got here to Houston, which was back in 2016.
Okay.
He came, and one of the neat services that we provide as Bridges, some of our staff and volunteers provide, is they'll go and pick up students from the airport. So that the very first person this student is meeting, as they walk into this new scary country situation, is a friendly face who wants to show them love and wants to show them specifically God's love.
That's amazing.
So this guy, we'll call him Sam, was picked up by one of our Bridges staff from the airport, and they just driving back to the University of Houston, had some great conversation. And this guy, from the moment he got here, he was coming to everything.
Wow.
Was just very interested, and the staff member loved on him really well, and continued to invite him and care for him and be a friend and answer all sorts of questions. And during the period of his master's degree, just more and more. Initially, he wasn't super, at least vocal about any kind of faith interest, but more and more began to ask questions and really start to explore faith. Yeah. He had lived in multiple different countries, different cultures, but had come from a faith background very different than Christianity. And so it was a big thing to start exploring this. And towards the end of his degree time, like he made the step where he realized, I really want to start following Jesus.
Wow.
And is still living here in the Houston area, involved with the local church and discipling his family. And so it's neat to see that. There's other stories that go very differently. Some of the more exciting stories we've had are students that will come, ask a lot of questions, really engage, and then they leave without us knowing exactly what came of that. Yeah. And we've had a couple of times in the last few years where we've heard word later that these students continued to pursue a relationship either with one of the volunteers that they met or somebody else, or they'll meet believers over in their home country, continue that journey, and then later come to faith. And we hear back about that. And so that really gives me hope for the hundreds of students that come through that we don't know exactly how they're leaving, but that God goes with them and he's still working. Amen. He's got a plan for them.
Do you get the sense that the Western church, and as we sort of, welcome internationals, do you get the sense that in the American church that we need to develop a little bit more of a posture of patience with our international friends, and those particularly maybe coming from a different religious background, that it just kind of takes a little time, for evangelism and discipleship and so forth to kind of, maybe it doesn't work on the pace or the time scale that we would think it would, but that it just maybe takes a little more time. Do you find that to be true?
I mean, it certainly can often take a little bit of time or a lot of time. God has his own timeline in each of our lives. And you can imagine coming from a culture where you've always only heard one thing, from everybody you trust.
All you know,
the likelihood of this dramatic, immediate change, it's very low. I mean, God can do anything, right?
Yeah.
But typically, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of trust being built. It takes a lot of exploring the roots of your own faith, the roots of the Christian faith, to really be ready to take any major steps forward.
Yeah.
So definitely it takes a lot of time. Now, that said, in defense of the church, I mean, most of the people I meet, they're willing to take the time. I mean, I meet a lot of people.
That's so encouraging.
They want to be friends with these students. They want to love them no matter what their faith journey looks like.
That's
maybe
beautiful.
It looks like they're moving forward. Maybe it doesn't look like anything's happening yet.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of very patient people who really love these students. We've got great volunteers.
That's encouraging.
That is super. And
sometimes,
again, culturally, so many of these students are from a corporate culture.
Yeah.
And so, and Americans rarely grasp that. It's your decision. And they don't realize that they've never made a decision without father, without mother, grandfather.
Yeah, it's a communal thing. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, we've got stories of volunteers who'll host a student and their family maybe for Thanksgiving. And then I'll hear back a year and a half, 2 years later, we've been getting together every week. We just love this family and we love interacting with them. And they just keep doing it. That's one of the beauties of the fact that we have so many people who love Jesus in the city.
Yeah.
Yes, the number 20,000 international students is kind of staggering. Like, how in the world can we befriend 20,000 international students? But when you think about how many hundreds of thousands of believers are in the area, if everyone just had one friend,
that's it. Yeah.
That would way more than cover what we're looking for. And so we always love to make these connections, even if it's just one here, one there, it adds up, and people can be a great friend and witness to people if they're willing to invest the time.
I love that tangible, achievable ask, and just to the average family in a church that is following Jesus. Would you just open your home to one?
Yeah,
just we're asking you to have one international friend. That's doable, and it's so encouraging to hear you articulate those numbers that like this could be done. Like all 20,000 of those students could have a believing American friend if the church responds. So
we talk about like our vision is that every international student would have like a real relationship with somebody who follows Jesus.
Amen.
And intentionally shows this student love and really intentionally shows them God's love.
That's
our
beautiful.
vision, is that everyone would have somebody.
Now, again, I heard you mention student there, and we've been talking about students. What if someone's here because of work, or maybe they're graduated? Is there another channel, or are they still quote part of the family there?
Students.
Yeah. And I often have people ask, like, what kind of students are we talking about?
Right.
So what we work with is university students,
Right.
mostly graduate students here for a master's or a PhD. We get some undergrad students as well. Our specific focus is on those student
Right.
years. Oftentimes, if a student is newly graduated and they've been part of our community,
They
they'll
keep hanging
continue
around,
to
yeah.
hang around,
Right.
and we're very happy to have those
Yeah.
people. In terms of a focused ministry for people that are no longer students, I think there's a lot of churches and other groups that probably have more of a focus on those things
Got
to
it.
bring those in than what we have at this point.
If you had a student arrive that you would say in Houston, there's not a church in that language, I would just be curious, because there's
Good question.
so many language churches, national churches. My assumption would be every language, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. I'm assuming there's
The
probably
same.
some students from some languages that they can't find a church in their language.
Yeah.
That's intriguing.
Because there's an awful lot of countries these students are coming from, and an
Sure.
awful lot of languages that they speak. But you're right. I mean, there
Yeah.
are tons of different churches in different languages here. Again,
Yeah.
these students all speak
Yeah, they're
English,
English
quite
level.
well.
Yeah.
And so many of them can go to an English language service.
Right.
But it does mean something more when you're able to worship
your
in
heart
your own
language,
language
yeah.
too. So, yeah.
Cool.
Wow. Well, neat. Well, good. Before we wrap up, I usually close with the question, what should I have asked you that I didn't? What would you want our partners, our listeners to know about Bridges International that maybe they haven't heard? And also repeat a contact number, how they can find out more, reach out, maybe volunteer.
Yeah. I think you kind of asked this, but I didn't get to it. But one just really staggering statistic that really got my attention is just the huge number of students that will come here from their countries wanting to learn about our culture and will never get into a local home.
Yes.
I've
Wow.
heard something around 70%, maybe even
I've heard the same.
80%
Wow.
Yeah.
of international students that
Never
come
get that.
here
Yeah.
to the USA will never have a chance to get into a local home. You know,
Wow.
they're just hanging out with other international students. They're hanging out on campus. They're in their apartments, but they never really get to see the inside of a home. And so that really, caught my attention. It's something I like to be able to share. Like, you can make a huge difference for 1 or 2 or 3 students, just opening up your home and inviting somebody in. So I guess I'll stick with that one. And then contact information again, HoustonBridges.com as a website, or volunteerhouston@bridgesinternational.com.
All right.
volunteerhouston@bridgesinternational.com. And yes, I know it's really long.
Super.
And I'll add for our local CityRise church members, come out this year for the Christmas party.
That's right.
We host it right here.
Yeah.
There'll be 100 students there from all over the world. It's one of my favorite events of the year. So come join Nate and I and volunteer and just kind of hang out with and share the season with these internationals when we get to Christmas time.
All right. Well, super. Well, thank you, Nate, for joining us. Thank you, listeners. And pray that God will bless you in your continued journey.
See you next time.